started it like 5 minutes. So everyone heard that. Kidding, no, we didn't. All right, welcome to Reformed Gamers, episode 2. Now we're gonna jump into the history of MMOs and our MMO experience. Joined with me is John or Zyler, Adam or Polytrix,
Hey.
and Cody or Zero. I myself as your host, Jake Gilly. All right, still have the whole alignment going on. Reform guys on top, and us on the bottom. I guess it's gonna just naturally stay that way. I didn't set it up that way. So I'm gonna start off right now with just saying we are gonna go this whole episode without talking about the biggest MMO out there with their new expansion coming out, World of Warcraft. We're gonna save that for a future episode, maybe around August, early August, that time period. But as of now, we're just gonna talk about MMOs, what they've been through, and how we're gonna see them in the. All right. So we're gonna start off with the past MMOs that we have played. Now, John, what was the first MMO that you played?
Probably the very first MMO would have been WoW. So I know we're trying to avoid talking to that. I was looking through some lists of like all MMO games that ever came out, and like I knew about EverQuest but didn't play it. Dark Age of Camelot I didn't play. I was gonna go with RuneScape, but I actually did play WoW before I played RuneScape. But yeah, unfortunately, WoW is my first, and we're not discussing WoW. So.
What about you, Adam?
The first MMO I played was Shadowbane, which was a pretty like hardcore PvP MMO. Did any of you guys ever play that?
No, I haven't even heard that one.
Heard of it. Tell us about it.
So the coolest thing about it was that it was kind of like all player-driven, like territory wars. Like guilds had cities that they controlled, and you like fought over control of different cities and towns and territories, and it was pretty much all PvP. Of course there was leveling for PvE, but there wasn't really like raiding or anything like that. It was just all PvP in the end game, and that was a kind of a brutal game to play for my first MMO. Looking back on it, it was probably the hardest, like most difficult to play MMO I ever played.
How old were you when this one came out?
When did that come out?
Or what year was it? I don't know.
Let me see. That came out in 2003. So I would have been playing it 2003, 2004. So I would have been like 13.
That was the first one you played was when you were 13.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Cody?
So I actually am gonna, before I played vanilla World of Warcraft, I actually got into this like cult classic game called Dark Age of Camelot. Have any of you guys played that one?
I haven't played it, but heard a lot. Yeah.
I watched my cousin play that a lot.
It's a similar concept, right? Like it's not completely player driven, but it's like all territory based, and guilds have blah blah blah. And like Adam said, it was a brutal one to get into to begin with because there's just a lot to learn, and games back then did not have the tutorials that they do today.
Nope.
So, a 13-year-old with a computer and, barely any education trying to figure it out. And, it was like the look of RuneScape if it was blown up with, it just felt like that clunky combat, like, ooh. And, but it had a lot of depth, and it was way beyond me. And so that one was probably my first. And I have some fond memories, but it's definitely not my favorite of past MMOs.
Now, mine was classic of RuneScape. I played RuneScape before I played WoW. I think I started playing RuneScape when I was like 7 or 8 years old. I would play it on our good old mom. You can't talk on the phone. I'm on the internet days.
Yep.
They bought me a membership, the premium membership, when I was that
Ooh.
age. So I was cool.
Nice.
I got to do that, and like I just spent so much time on that game. I loved it. I would love. My thing was I would farm the arrow things, the fletch. It's like fletching. I would farm fletching the whole time. That's all I do. And I'd make gold. I'd buy myself gear, and I just keep doing that. And I was like 8 years old, like playing the market kind of thing. I was like Wolf of Wall Street kind of doing that. And I love that. I love that you can earn something like just from I'm gonna do this so I can earn this amount of money so I can buy this game. And I love that. That's what really got me into MMO.
Yeah.
Now I think my tastes are a little different now because I work for it, so I actually do that in real life. I can come home and kill some dragons on the game. But yeah, that's so everyone kind of started off at those player base, economy or territory kind of games.
Yeah. Like cult, they definitely were like the cult following. Like if the people who played it really played it, and it wasn't nearly as mainstream like as it's gotten. Yeah, for a long time.
I don't think games were that mainstream as they are now.
No
way.
Didn't bring it up at school. Didn't bring it up much at all.
Talking about Fortnite, kid. Oh, here's a locker.
Here's a locker.
Actually, no, I don't know. We
Man.
played Call of Duty.
Yeah, I was gonna say Call of Duty was probably the first big.
It was like the one that
like everyone played.
Everyone was okay saying that you played it. If you played anything else, you're like, you're fucking weird, dude.
Console was more accepted in my school than like PC game. Like more people talked about console games.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, that's a kind of our past of MMOs. MMOs are like our background. I mean, we've all been playing them for years and years. I know Adam probably plays the most variety of MMOs out of all of us, I would say. Now I kind of want to jump into the sad part of the show, the MMOs that have died, gone away, died out, or have simply just moved on to a another version of it that could be worse. Like Guild Wars 2, maybe new RuneScape. I don't know.
Wow.
It's personal opinion. Come on.
It's not at the word.
It's a completely different game. That's all I was saying.
Not allowed to use that word for an episode.
Right.
It's too easy.
Yeah, it's low hanging fruit. Now I want to talk about old school RuneScape died out slowly, and now they're trying to like restart it, mobile client and all that stuff. And I think it was just too little, too late. When instead of like going back to something that was like 2007 RuneScape, instead of going back to that, why wouldn't in like 2008 realize that they're not doing it right? Like, stray that path. Something in that situation where your player base doesn't like the changes to the game and you're not doing any change it, and it's just gonna come back and bite you. And luckily, that company is still around, kind of. So, but a lot of other companies weren't that lucky. I know one huge game that died out. Well, not huge. It was really hyped up, super hyped up game. WildStar. Everyone, I don't know, remember when WildStar was launched? I think I want to say 2013, 2014, around there.
Check.
Yeah.
Real quick.
WildStar was this. It looked great. Had all these cool things, and it just didn't. It was like, oh my god, WildStar is a WoW killer. It's done everything. Just clicked, And,
yeah, it was even made by a lot of like the vanilla WoW dev team. It had everything going for it.
Yeah, it was something else, but it did not succeed. Why? Because it had for the at least for the end level, there was like no casual way to get into the game. The end level stuff was so hard that like mythic raiders in WoW now couldn't like touch it. Every person I've heard that has played WildStar at that level was like, yeah, no one can even. So now, do you guys think when it comes to that, do MMOs need to have a low barrier of entry so it can sustain its player base?
I think unfortunately, time and time again, that's turned out to be the case. People, all say they want the hardcore, no casual experience, but you kind of need the casuals to fill the world so that you can be the elite members of the world when you play it hardcore. But if there's only hardcore players, there's just not enough for it to be an MMO anymore.
I mean, I guess I'd counter that just giving a different viewpoint. Yeah, I think if you want to go mainstream, you brought up the term WoW killer. Like, if that's your goal, like, yeah, you got to play it safe. But, there have been some more grindy games that aren't, like, casual friendly, I would call, like Black Desert Online, I would call, like, super grindy. Just a game where it's like, okay, you're going to be here for a while. But, I mean, in anything in life, there's, like, a pyramid, right? You're going to have your top 1%. You're going to have the top, 10 to 20%. And then you're going to have the other 80% that's, just kind of there based on skill, time commitment, what where they're at with the character. And so I think you can still get away with over tuning a game. It's just you have to kind of set the barrier for expectations on that as well, right? You're not going to have multi-million-dollar subscriptions. Probably you're going to be another niche MMO.
And I think that's the problem right there. Niche MMO, like the whole point of the MMO is massive multiplayer online game. Like it can be big, but it's gonna feel empty because there's not that many players.
I mean,
it doesn't have to be big. One of the biggest mistakes that a lot of MMOs have done is they've made too many servers and they've split up their player base too much. And typically they'll do that, at launch because they have such a big influx of population, their servers are overloaded. They'll make the mistake of adding more servers and splitting the groups, but then inevitably the player base drops significantly a few months in, and then all of the servers go from being like packed and full of life to being kind of dull, not having quite as many players as they should, and then that over time gets worse and worse. And usually, even if they start doing server mergers, they do them way too late. Like they should do them a lot sooner than they do them.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess I'll just jump in though. And by the time you get into the hardcore stuff, at least in my experience, when I've gotten into the hardcore stuff, I generally I'm not wowed by the massive multiplayer online part anymore, right? Like now I'm playing with a group of 25 to 40 individuals. Generally, you tack on 1.5 times for absences. And so, like that's the group I play with. So yeah, then you may lose the massive aspect. But for me, I enjoy playing with like, a group of 40 to 60 individuals, a group of 25 to, 35 individuals. And I'm not a world PvPer, so I don't need that world of life to feel like, but obviously as a business model, you do.
Well, I would say for the whole I need 20 to 40 players that's a huge number still. Like 40 people, getting 40 people together to play together is not an with that being said, when you have that in an MMO where you need 40 people to do a piece of content, you're going to be able to do it when the game's fresh and people are actually playing it. But maybe with some of these lower MMOs, they set their group of numbers that high, they're not going to be able to fill those numbers, 6 months down the road when they're developing content slowly because they don't have the backing of these huge studios. I see what a lot of kind of change the subject a little bit. I see a lot of MMOs do this at the start, and it's mostly these Korean MMOs that just come out of the gate as free to play. All right, so they come out free to play, so they don't have any money coming in at the start. They gate content and they gate like how fast you level, some classes, maybe stuff like this behind money, and that just makes them look bad at the start. So these games just like they already have a bad rap at the start when they start off because they're like, oh, they're pay to win, which is kind of the case. But what do? Do you pay that $30, $40 purchase for a game and then $15 subscription fee? Because as of right now, those are the most successful MMOs. Is that model? Final Fantasy is doing it. WoW. ESO has a premium membership, but you still have to buy the game up front. Now I know. I guess you could say Black Desert Online is one that's somewhat pretty successful, I would say, but it's Asia. They have that $10, pay $10 for the game, and I think there's probably a premium membership, right? Anyone played?
I know you can buy like a collector pack or something that gives you a bunch of benefits, but I forget. I don't think it's a subscription though.
So
I need to check.
Buy a membership.
It's a buy to play.
Buy to play.
Freemium.
Yeah, so those freemium games are really just hurting the MMO genre in general because you start off the game, it's just your game's not going to succeed at a level where it would if you charged for it. Because everyone can see through it that it's a blatant like cash grab. Usually reuse. I feel like I'm playing the same game over and over. Like I remember, I bought into and I got refunded Bless Online, and I felt like I was playing Terra basically. If you guys played Terra,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like they were using assets. Have any of you guys played any Korean MMOs? Cody, Sean?
I
I've played
I
Terra
have.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Not much.
Terra.
Bless looked pretty similar to Terra.
Yeah, Terra was one. I mean, I got a little bit into it. It just felt like a click, click, click.
I've played a few of them. Only like one or two, but I usually like watch on the streams like the day they come out to see if this one's actually going to be decent or not. And just watching them, it's like they all seem so similar. They look pretty much the same. It's just generic storyline every time.
Well, also that we were
some of them have a unique, mechanic about the combat, and if that really clicks with you, you'll probably have fun in the game. But if it doesn't, then
Yeah.
probably not.
I figured out that I do not like action combat. Like, action combat itself is fun, but grinding to level with action combat just eventually feels exhausting to me. Like,
Yeah.
I get burnt out on grinding through the levels when
like sometimes I just kind of want to mindlessly hit a few buttons while I'm doing something on the other monitor. You can't do that with the action MMOs.
I'm kind of different on that. I would say the action combat is kind of like one of the big appeals of the game, and it gets you really like in the zone when you're leveling up.
I think what Adam's trying to say is like it's fun and like PvPing, doing a raid or whatever with an action MMO style is probably better than a typical one. But
yeah,
an MMO is you're not putting hours in, you're putting days in. Like that gets tiring, like having to be on point constantly.
Yeah, every time I've played an MMO with action combat, I've like found the leveling process so much more grueling than like a tab target MMO, where I don't really mind leveling that bad. Like, yeah, it sucks. It's a time sink, but it's not that hard.
I wanna. John was talking about how they kind of like copy paste a lot of these games. And, Jake was mentioning though how with the, exclusion of a couple, like Bless Online, they tend to go on to make, a relatively decent amount of money for what you have to commit to them. But, when a company tries to break barriers and change the MMO genre, like WildStar tried to did to a degree, right? Like there's some stuff that was done before, but it definitely was like they had some new features and all this, that it's
Yeah,
an
I believe they
expensive
didn't
flaw.
have. I believe they didn't have a targeting system. Like it was all.
No, it was action. Action.
It was like you shoot this ability and it's this
So
grid on the ground or
imagine
whatever.
aiming all that stuff and then also doing like insane combat features, and it's a lot. So that was like the only end game content thing at that level. There was no easy
Yeah.
mode.
Well, and so yeah, my point is like you kind of have this weird gray zone where it's like, all right, you can copy and paste and make money, but that doesn't appeal generally to me, at least. I don't like playing a different MMO, same, where it just feels the same. But also, you try to break out of the genre, and another one was Rift. They're still around technically, but they came out and they kind of had this brand new concept, and I really enjoyed it. But then, like a year in, I'm like, okay, what happened?
Well, they started switching to a free model, and then stuff that originally you had to earn was.
I mean, even
Service?
before that, it was dropping down. Like I was on when I was playing Rift, actually, I was on like a top 5 North American progression guild. Like we were high level, and a year into the game, they just made enough changes where like the player base had significantly dropped, and it was like, okay, what do we do? And a lot of people just bailed out of the game at that point. And
And that's the challenge I think that most MMOs face and probably most fail at. If you just keep it the exact same game, like you just never do a patch, never update it, keep the classes the same because people like the classes. Well, eventually people get bored of the classes.
yeah.
So you
I
have
mean,
you have to update them, do an expansion or whatever.
well, they even came out with like new raids, but when it's the same mechanic feel, you can just kind of really dive out quick. It's easy to not be attached.
Well, and it's like you're doing these constant small changes that are like meeting the player demand. Like they want, it to be more like this, more like that, whatever. And you're giving them what they want or what you feel like they should want, whether that is what they're vocally saying or not. But eventually you change the game so much that it doesn't feel like the original game that the players fell in love with. And then they fall out. And that seems to be a pitfall that almost every MMO has and can't really be avoided.
I would say they do that with. You have to give in to the community enough, but you also have to have a vision for your product, realize like what you need to out as a designer, not be like, oh my god, no, let's just not make expansion packs and just stay at that same level 60 for the rest of our lives. Raid these same bosses for the rest of our lives. Like they have to realize that maybe we should make more content. No, this is what we want to make, and this sells, works. But if they keep giving in, at least with some of these smaller games, it might not work. The community isn't always right. Like,
Well, yeah, it goes both ways though. Just like anything, it's a pendulum, right? Like sometimes the devs will go too far, and if they're not willing to step back and be like, "Oh, we made a mistake," then you're going to lose your player base. Whereas if, like you said, you just coast along and you're like, player changes, then you're not feeding them anything new. They are kind of all of a sudden they're going to be like, well, this is the same game I was playing a year ago. This new MMO is coming out. I'm going to go try that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not always the changes that the devs want.
Yeah.
make it an issue for the players. Sometimes it's the business people, the marketing people want
Mhm.
things that are more marketable that they can advertise to more players to get them in that aren't necessarily good for the long term of the game.
Yeah.
Like that's a big mistake that like Star Wars Galaxies made. Like they moved up when they were going to put Jedi into the game by years because the marketing people wanted them to have Jedi in the game so that they could advertise that to players. And that was like a really overpowered class that they had designed to not be accessible for years. And then all of a sudden they rushed it up, and then Jedi started popping up everywhere, and it was a big problem in the game. And
Yeah.
that kind of led to the downfall of that game.
Yeah. Dude, just like anything else, there's business politics. And
Yeah.
if a business doesn't have a strong leader, it totally can just kill itself from the inside out.
Oh yeah. So now I kind of want to switch over to like what are the current MMOs and what they can do better, what we like about them. Playing. I know what I saw. I know on the 31st, a huge new update is coming out for Albion Online. You guys don't know what Albion Online is? It was a kind of like a territory guild based MMO. And it was an amazing concept and everything, and they just ruined it. They ruined it because it's premium. Because you can buy gold in the game, and the whole game is ran around an income of like a giant economy, and they just you can buy gold now. It's I don't know. But what are you guys playing other than thoughts on Albion?
Yeah.
Well, I think I played Albion quite a bit. I think Cody played a little bit in the beta. I don't remember if he played after it launched. And
Yeah, I played a little bit after launch, but not much longer after that.
yeah, that kind of like burned out real quick. I got on there the other night, and there was a lot more people on than I expected would be on. Like if you check like their forums and their
They
Reddit,
have
like
a
they're
solid
pretty
player
dead.
base.
But
Their player base is pretty good. It's just it's you don't have a following on Twitch.
right,
People mistake for not having a
definitely
population.
it's a niche MMO. Like between the like hardcore PvP and the sandbox and like the brutal economy and the gold buying, like it turned a lot of people off, and it only appeals to like certain people. And then the combat's much different than any other MMO because it's like a top-down ability. It's kind of like a MOBA combat in an MMO universe.
Kind of like
So
RuneScape,
that's
the
kind of interesting
combat.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
closer to RuneScape.
Yeah, I mean, I would say my experience with Albion was overall positive, but it was one of those games where it was kind of like, okay, I need 5 or, like I need 50 iron ore to go out. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to run out and I'm going to go get 50 iron ore. And then I'm going to make this piece of gear to up this one thing. And it almost felt like I was playing a profession game like for a good chunk of it. And, and maybe I just wasn't doing it right. And feel free to say so, but it really was for me. It kind of just got old fat. Like it felt I never really liked RuneScape, and so when it kind of started to feel like that, I was like, all right, I think I'm gonna move on.
It's more of a game where you pick your own role, kinda. You want to go kill dungeon, go through dungeons, kill bosses. You can do that. If you want to get a group together and go like PvP and like gang people nonstop, do that. If you want to just be like a merchant or whatever and sell stuff and travel from point A to point B selling stuff, that you can do that. If you want to cut down trees all day for some reason, you can do that.
Yeah, I think the worst. I mean, the
You
part
see,
that
all of
really
these things have something in common where there's an economy, and that's all ruined by you paying $50 in real life for money. So,
yeah. Oh, I mean, for me, the game really, I ended up running with Guild, and Adam was there too. And we ran through and we demolished this dungeon, and it was going great. And we got out, and we got caught in this PvP fight, and I lost all the gear that was on me. And when you're going to a dungeon, you bring the best gear you got, and you're always supposed to have 3-4 backup sets, right? Because when you die, you lose everything that's on you. And to me, that's just not an appealing way to play a game.
Yeah,
Some
it
people
makes it
being on the other
very-
side of that is what's the appeal of the game.
Absolutely, that's why it is a niche. It's one
Just
of those
knowing
things.
you're just crushing someone's soul.
It's very high risk, high reward, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that play it just as gankers. Like that's all they do is
That's what
they
this-
just gank people and steal their gear, and it can be very frustrating to lose all your gear, but it's also it's a lot of fun when you win a PvP battle. Like you're out with your guild and
It
you
is
guys
a
win something.
huge
You take
reward.
over a dungeon. It's pretty fun, but yeah, it can be exhausting.
Yeah, and it is like one of those things, like I was saying the other last episode. Like as a dad, I just don't have the time to invest to grind it all up for that, to lose it all, and to be like, all right, well, before I can go run another dungeon, I gotta grind it all back up again.
I guess that's why a lot of MMOs are struggling, because you can't really have that grindy experience anymore that people were used to 10 years ago. You have to have like instantaneous. You get into the game and it's getting the meat and potatoes of the game. Jumping right
Yeah.
in
Without being overwhelmed somehow.
without being overwhelmed. So there's
MMOs used to be developed around, and kind of the expectation was, you're putting 4 hours a day into this, and now it's like 15-20 minutes a day is what
Yeah.
players
Well,
are expecting it to be designed around. Yeah, if that, every other day.
And it is that main, that's what happens when you go from, kind of the community you had to the mainstream look of it, right?
or your community just getting older and having more responsibilities. Like people that played vanilla WoW, raided and raid led, probably don't have the time now to do the same thing, or even close to the amount of time.
And we don't have, there's like several reasons why, and we're not going to talk about WoW, but
My bad.
I think
Come on, you're the
that
host. You're the one that made the rules.
I didn't make the. I just said we just on a topic. Compare.
yeah, I would say, there's no right way or wrong way to do it, but like I was saying earlier, there is a mainstream way and there is a grindy way to do it, and everyone, not, I don't think one person is of one size fit all for MMOs nowadays. You're just not gonna have that.
And the just gaming market in general has changed a lot. Like, in 2001, 2004, it was only the hardcore nerds playing games like this, whereas now everyone plays video games of some sort. Almost everyone who's ever wanted to has played WoW at some point, or their game of choice. And it's like, so because there's a lot more, just everyone's playing it now. There's a lot of people who don't have the I don't know, they're not used to being demanded to put 4 hours a day into a game. They're used to, I pick up a game of Madden on the Xbox and it takes 15 minutes. I play a few matches of Call of Duty. It takes 20 minutes, whatever. And they're used to being able to just pick up and go like that without a lot of time.
So with
that changes, just the gaming market in general. Games like Fortnite are the top game now, where you just hop into a game, you play it, it takes you 5 minutes to, 30 minutes if you make it all the way to the end.
Yeah. It is that, and you get that instant gratification that you're talking about. But I mean, you definitely lose something.
Yeah, you don't get that worked for something until games that much anymore. Now, at least with MMOs, you don't get that much anymore. so they're easy to get into, and it's not like a big moment where like, yeah, I made it, I did it. Remember like killing Lich King? Not gonna say it. Never mind.
Warcraft
But
3,
those
right?
big
Yeah.
in Warcraft 3, but those big moments that you and a group of people put time together, you did all this time, all this back work just for that one moment that happens, and that's what I think my biggest or for MMOs is like a group of people getting together, you know, what is like 8 hours a week, and have a collective idea and a collective goal of what to do.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's a bit of
And
a meme, but they've shifted the sense of pride and accomplishment away from the work you put into, you buy the upgrade, you buy the unlocks.
and I think the games that are good right now for the MMO genre avoid those. Pay for your gratification, like some of the big ones now. ESO, Final Fantasy, that one game. There
I think
another one
Final
that I'm
Fantasy is
missing.
the top game right now based off subscriber count.
Yeah, Elder Scrolls. Well, I guess it doesn't really have a buy to buy to play.
Yeah,
There's
it's buy to
Yeah.
play, and then
there's
there's
a
an optional premium subscription. Yeah.
Yeah. Those games they don't offer really much of a incentive to buy gear or anything like that, and they're doing great. So maybe if we want to see in the future, or what developers need to look at in the future, all right, these games are successful and they're making us the income for the last 5 years or so. I would say 4 years. I don't know how long ESO has been out. 4 or 5 years. They can do that by not being shitty, I guess, and not
Well, I
being
mean, you also
greedy.
another thing though is you named off games, both Elder Scrolls Online, Final Fantasy, and Warcraft all have they have background, right? They have a history. Final Fantasy's been around for practically 20 of these damn things at this point. Elder Scrolls was built on Morrowind and Oblivion, there's relatability, right? There's instant demand. We're trying to create that demand without the history is harder, and so you shortcut it or you bypass that by like, okay, well, we'll jump, we still have to run a business, we'll jumpstart revenue through this freemium policy, and it's I personally don't enjoy it, but like as a marketer I understand why you would do that, but as a gamer, like it is
Yeah.
the ultimate sin.
Yeah, like
it's
it's.
sorry, John.
Go ahead. All right, I'll go. Like it's like you said, it's a lot easier when you have a popular established universe that you're building the game off of. All the Elder Scrolls games. There's like Elder Scrolls Online is like the sixth one, I think, if you don't count mobile games. I know it's not Elder Scrolls 6 that's coming out, but it was the sixth Elder Scrolls game.
Yeah.
You got Warcraft, you got all the Final Fantasies. The current one is 14, so that says enough right there. Whereas
Oh
Bless
yeah,
Online,
their numbers
I
sound
have
crazy.
Yeah.
I have no history of Bless Online. I have no idea what it's about really.
Well, thing is,
It's a lot harder to keep people invested because they didn't grow up playing these games and they're not invested to stick around.
so these games they have to come out of the bat swinging. Like if they every single time with Albion, not that big of a studio, not that big of a background, but they come in and on their launch, what do? They add in this horrible way that ruins the whole game. With Bless, it ran like absolute garbage and all these problems at launch, which is expected from an MMO. They're never gonna know how many they're gonna have sign up, but they still haven't. They still had all these glaring issues that should have people should have learned by now aren't gonna work. So
They specifically should have learned. That game's like 7 years old and has launched in like 4 regions.
Yeah, I mean, to move and going on that, like to move to a new one, I'm interested to see, like, okay, if you don't have a gaming background, can you make it with a name brand background, like Amazon's new game? Like, can you just force market share through name recognition like that? Is it could that kind of be a game changer? The answer is we'll see. But
I think it. Just to add on, I think it's kind of like if you are a big company and you can sustain the development without needing to nickel and dime squeeze every bit of juice you can out just to keep the business going. Like, you could look at Activision with Destiny or something like that. That's a mega corporation. Like, they don't need to.
Are we considering is Destiny an MMO?
I wouldn't say it is, but.
Oh, all right. So I guess this will get into our another.
I
point.
was figuring this would be a good segue point.
So what we keep seeing is these MMOs just launching, dying really quick.
MMOs.
MMOs launch, die, launch, die, launch, die. As a big company, these AAA companies, they're probably not going to invest in making an MMO with the track record of trying to compete with the big. Let's just call them the big three. All right, trying to compete with the big three. So what do they do? What is that gonna turn into? I know there is some MMOs planned for the future, obviously still, but are we gonna phase into something a little less drastic in an MMO, like Destiny, like Warframe, Monster Hunter? These games where a bunch of people are playing and you have the potential to play with all these people, but you're only gonna be in these small 5-man groups. Are these considered MMOs still? Are these?
I'd consider them like an MMO light at best, because it's like, Call of Duty had millions and millions of players, and you could play, up to like what was Ground Wars, 16 players, 18 players in the game. That's bigger than the Division had in a group setting, but people called Division an MMO. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's just a big multiplayer game, but
so I guess
to me, an MMO is, it's got a big world where you can run into tons and tons of people, not like you get match made into a match with people. I don't consider that an MMO.
Even if they have like a hub where people can go around and I know Warframe has Sentis or whatever, and it's like their big hub where all these people join up and run around showing off their gear, showing off their emotes or whatever. Kind of like
how many people are there?
I don't know. I would say 40, 50 around there, maybe more. What I saw when like going to the West River guy, the bounty guy, that was around that amount. That was just for the hub. Then what you'd do is you'd queue up for a squad, and they drop you in a squad. So
I don't know. I'd say MMO light at best.
What do you think, Adam? I've kind of been thinking on this because we brought it up a little bit ago.
I don't know. I haven't played most of these games that much. Like
this seems to be kind of a new subgenre.
So it seems like there's a transition from massive MMO to more of a
just a multiplayer.
Well, it's like the
grinding RPG.
The success of MMOs has definitely, I think, led game designers to try to take some of the aspects of MMOs and integrate it into other games without making the like big persistent world that takes up a lot of like server space and technological hardware to keep going.
And development costs.
And development costs as well, yeah. Because MMOs take a long time to develop. And we've definitely seen a slowdown in the amount of MMOs coming out. Like from 2007 to 2013 or 2014, there was tons of MMOs coming out, and there haven't been any other than Albion in the last couple of years. Everything else has just been like a relaunch, like Bless or like Black Desert, where they're just moving regions. It might be coming out in the US for the first time, but it's not actually a new game.
Yeah,
I'm looking at
I-
the history of MMOs.
I mean, I would say that it is a way to eliminate the high cost of developing a real world while integrating all the perks of having, a community of people. And for me, I think we kind of nailed on it, right? Like it's a multiplayer game. I wouldn't call it massive where you can bump into people, but I did mention earlier my games revolve around my group of friends or my guild, my guild mates. So even in an MMO, I tend to more base my experience off of like this smaller group of people. So, maybe it is for the best that, or not for the best, but maybe it is a successful archetype to create a community feel without the requirement of development and building out the game around this concept of having a living world.
So they can
What
show
would you
up-
say, Jake? Because you seemed like you were arguing for it. I don't know if that was just to keep
I'm
discussion going or if
saying
that's
they-
your viewpoint.
I mean, you can call them an MMO, you don't call them an MMO. They're kind of here to stay because right now I'm looking at this list. The last two MMOs of 20. There's one that came out in 2015, which is Black Desert Online, and one that came out in 2017, which is Albion Online. That's click it. So,
Yep.
compared to 2014, where there was 5, 2013, where there was 10, 11 different MMOs came out in 20.
How many of them are still around? Significantly.
2013 MMOs?
Defiance re-released, probably gonna die off in about 3 months.
I wouldn't consider Defiance alive right now, so no.
Well, Final Fantasy 14 A Realm Reborn was
Neverwinter.
2013.
I feel like I hear about Neverwinter.
Yeah.
Well, and that was when Final Fantasy was relaunched. Like that wasn't the first iteration of Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
relaunch.
That was their oopsie relaunch.
Arcade was 13. I hear that name every now and then.
That game's dead.
Oh,
Premium.
that's one of the games that pisses me off. How the developers just ruined that game. Like I was really hyped for that game, and then just the business model of it and the way things were gated and changed. Like at the last minute at launch, it felt like it was just terrible.
So it's just
Yeah, so other than expansion packs and relaunches of certain big one, I feel like kind of MMOs are gonna be a while before we see the next big one because
They're-
developers have realized it's such a huge investment, and as the history has shown, they have one of the highest failure rates of like any game
Yeah.
because
Well,
you kind of need a continued basis to profit off of them,
Yeah. And I mean, the
A
only
Steam
way
game, you can just sell it and that's it. You're done.
I mean, how and they've done so much to it. I feel like the next iteration here is going to be some form of VR or AR integration in MMO, and that's like a ways off.
Yeah.
Right?
In like a decade, we'll have a Ready Player One Oasis, and that'll be like the next biggest game in the world.
So there is
Didn't
an MMO
I thought
coming out.
ESO did a VR thing?
I repeat, MMO coming out called Crowfall.
Yeah.
Heard about that at all, Adam?
I have not.
I've read up on
Yeah,
it.
that's if I remember right, that's kind of going to be a hardcore PvP MMO. I want to say that it has some developers that, well, Crowfall had some MMOs before it, of the same name, I think.
Hmm.
Let me do a quick check on this before
So Profile is
Murder
basically
this.
going to be one of those territory based MMOs where
Mhm.
you friends together world and you got to take over the world basically, and different campaigns you can do, crafting, all that stuff. um Basically the only MMO I've heard anything about, and it's relatively close to release. I
What?
clicked join early access. I can get in for a small fee of $50. Wow. Or I can buy the adventure starter pack for $200.
Huh.
Yeah, that comes with a mansion. I can buy a mansion for $200 in this game. Hmm. It's like they're doing something that everyone else
I'm just
did.
surprised to see that Travian Games is one of the publishers. You played Travian a bit, the browser game, Adam? I know I
Oh
played that
yeah,
a lot.
is
Cody,
it?
you played that some with me? Yeah. That's like a totally different game for them. That like
I did
Travian is
not
like the
realize
game
that.
that like Clash of Clans and all those games are based off of. So that's interesting to see that they're going into an MMO.
Now, what I've seen and what I've heard from the developers of the game, I hate hyping up MMO. Get it every time I've been.
They all get so hyped, and then it just gets unrealistic.
Well,
And
I
especially
think
as
that's kind
there's
of a
less of
sign
them.
though that like every time people get so hyped, every time people want this, they are craving a good MMO to take their time up like the old ones did back in the day. So I think
not there.
that's a sign that there's still a demand for it. But
There's a demand, but you want to be able to have that heavy hardcore grinding and working for swag, working for your gear and all this stuff, and then you need to have that balance of average Joe wants to play a couple hours a week, still wants to
Yeah.
do something. I think that's
Well,
okay. I think that you
mhm.
should have levels for that. I don't think you're just making it so only the hardcore people buy game. You're shooting yourself in the foot and you're gonna make no money and your game's gonna die, and the people that play the game um hardcore aren't gonna have any content.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the hard thing is for that, like, you can't, when some of these first MMOs came out, right? Like, you could just wow people by the fact it's an MMO, right? Like, whoa, look at this huge living world. Look at all these people. Look at all this stuff they're able to do. Like, at this point, MMO technology is old. Like, yeah, it looks better. Maybe it runs better. But that's not, you can't get away with just like wowing the average Joe on that. They're going to jump in, invest their time, and just because it looks cool or feels good for a little bit, like there does have to be some form of reward, and for someone who's going to invest a shorter amount of time, but also you know making sure that that doesn't take away from the people who are grinding the hardcore aspect, right? Because the people who want the reward probably want just as much reward as the hardcore people, just because, generally they're like, well, I'm putting time in and I'm paying you guys. I would also like to be there. Whereas the hardcore players like, well, I'm investing the time too, and so why should they get the same gear I do when I'm going to put in more time than they are, invest more into the game? It's you have to. It's hard to cater to both, I would say, without tilting one side or the other.
so with that being said, what is going to be the future of the MMOs? How If an MMO comes out a year from now, what are you, John? What are you gonna want in this MMO? What's gonna make you play it?
what's gonna make me play an MMO in a year from now? Well, there's a lot of stuff that makes an MMO worth playing, I think. I think this goes kind of the core design philosophy. You know, before they just kind of made the world free to go into. Now it's all about end game rating, and you know you got to defeat the big bad on the box or whatever. And so a lot of the experience up to that hardcore point kind of feels empty. And unless you're doing that hardcore point, you know, you don't really enjoy the game. But if, you know, you just make it more about the journey, it'll be a more living world. There'll be more people in it. And then because the focus is on the journey, people who put in the work for the hardcore, which are going to be rarer, they're going to feel more rewarded and be more elite, I guess, which is kind of the whole reason people go hardcore anyways. They want to be the top 1%.
So do you want more of a end game progression, or do you want just leveling itself to be somewhat difficult? Because right now, every game you play, leveling is 1, 2, 1.
Yeah. What I want is I don't want the expectation that the majority of the players are going to do end game rating, because that kind of destroys everything. It should only be a few percent that even make it there, I think.
So,
and I don't mean like it's just so hard that, you know, the casual player can't do it. It's just there's so much else to do that the casual player doesn't feel like they need to do it, or they're not playing the game.
So you're saying that you don't need to have to play the end game, the big, you know, big boss at the end to feel like you're having fun and right? You can just
you should be able to enjoy the game without needing to do the final boss on the hardest difficulty or hit the max rank in PvP or whatever. You should be able to just enjoy the game for enjoying the game. And that's kind of a general one sentence statement for what would make me play an MMO, but
Yeah.
What about you, Adam?
Well, I think it's kind of funny to hear John say that, because I think in any MMO John plays, he's gonna be one of those people that's killing the final boss and getting.
I am, yeah. But when everyone is beating the final boss, there's no prestige to beating the final boss.
John's the guy farming linen cloth for 6 hours for no reason.
Got to get those gains.
Gotta get, guys. This is 20 gold. All right.
I think there definitely has to be a mix of easily accessible things and hard things to keep a large crowd interested, because there needs to be hard things to strive for and to want to attain, but there also needs to be easy things that if you just have a little bit of time, or you don't have a guild or a group of people that you can do that still feel rewarding. So there always needs to be like smaller dungeons, not just large raids, and there always needs to be, you know, consumables that are valuable that don't take rare materials, like some like really valuable piece of gear or something that, you know, isn't consumable. So there needs to be just kind of a mix of things that can keep people with a little bit of time entertained and also feel like they're progressing, building value, accomplishing something. But there also needs to be things that are really hard that can occupy the time of the people that have the time to do the hard things. And I don't think there's currently an MMO that has a good mix of both.
Can't say the name, but I think it does.
I would disagree. I think I'm
with who?
Adam.
Adam on that.
Yeah.
There's no middle ground. I think that was John's kind of consensus too. Is there is no middle ground. It's rather you're doing nothing, or you're doing everything.
It's either the game is entirely made for casuals and there's no challenge, fun, or reward for the elite, or the game is entirely made for the elite and there's just not enough people to have a game based off the elite.
Yeah.
And then if everyone's elite, you know, you don't feel elite compared to anyone else.
This is with your normal get a group together to kill the biggest raid boss. Group together to be the best PvP. This is for every MMO. How you guys?
I think that's mainly for PvE in the MMOs. PvP is different. Like in PvP, it kind of depends on your system, whether like I think that the PvP systems with like territory wars and like multiple factions, like 3 factions, are a lot more interesting than anything else. And I think if you really enjoy the gameplay of the game, you can just play PvP and enjoy it regardless. It's the PvE aspect has to have the better balance to keep people interested in the PvE.
So we're talking about MMO. I think we've all kind of been talking about time. All right. Now with
Mostly.
MMO, I feel like that's just because nowadays there's so many good games that the PvP in an MMO isn't really necessary. Like, I know I used to play, instead of being in that one game, I would just play League. I'm like, why would I want to PvP in this game? It doesn't make sense. Why would I'm just gonna play a different game and I'm gonna kill bosses in this one? So I was thinking about that with the balance between PvP, how they form a game.
I think we're similar in that we really like PvP in general. Like we like to beat someone else, basically. But the game has to have a fine balance of incentives to get people to play it, but also not just demoralize and crush people who are losing that they stop playing it. That way people keep playing it.
I'd say for me, like if you were catering to Cody Alexander and didn't care about anyone else, the game could release with no PvP and I would be okay. Like generally I play on PvE realms anyways, and shoot me if you must. But I'm not a huge PvP person in MMOs. Like when I play an MMO, I'm there to immerse myself in a role, in a world, and I feel fulfilled when I'm doing really well in a role or a specific aspect within that, within a group of people all competing to beat a challenge that's there. And for me, like I can do PvP, but I've never felt as rewarded from PvP as PvE.
So I love world PvP, and I love games with like territory control battles where it's basically a lot of world PvP. I don't particularly ever get really into games with just like battlegrounds where that's the main PvP. Like I could take or leave battlegrounds. I'd rather play a game of League or a match of some shooter than most like instanced PvP matches in MMOs. So I'd say I want an MMO to have PvP, and I want it to be world PvP. I could take or leave instanced battleground scenarios.
I think I'm the same way as Adam. I really like those the tier. Instance ones just don't gratifying. Win, like, all right, I won. I got 30.
Let me
people in
re-queue.
Re-queue. I got more than I expected. But when you're fighting for like a territory, like a flame, it's intense. Like fighting for like a substance. Like your pile of money and 2 people are fighting for it. Like I can't believe I completely forgot to mention this game in this episode. EVE Online.
Oh. Wow, how did that one sneak through?
I was wondering.
I guess we're going for another 20 minutes. But EVE is like this massive game, and like giant battles, millions of dollars in currency are lost. It's incredible because I mean, they don't happen that often, is what I hear. But when they do, it's like just could you imagine having this like $1 million corporation or whatever they're called?
Yep.
C word. What's the other C word? Coag
Coalition.
coalition. That's it. Yeah. And then first another one, and just like everything is lost. But like that experience got to be one of the funnest, like most cool MMO moments that can be around. Stuff like that is why I like it. Now, any of you played Eve? Experience anything like this? And
Very little.
I played Eve, but I would say for me, even with that, like when I played, I played with my brother, and he wanted to be a merchant. And I was like, okay, well, if you want to be a merchant, I'll be like the defender, right? So, like even in that, I was looking more to fill a role, and it wasn't so much of like I dug into I'm going to join this corporation and we're going to control this sector of space. It was more like, okay, I'd rather fit into a role and play that with a smaller group than like go into any form of instanced or planned
battle.
PvP. Yeah.
So you'd rather just like log on, do your own thing, with your friends, all core group of friends, than have like this giant group of people that like, all right, they need this amount of minerals, job order for this amount, we need to get this done, blah blah blah. You'd rather just be like, all right, I'm gonna log on today, and my guy's usually like a bodyguard. I know my buddy's a trader, so I'm gonna make sure he can get the sector well. Like you get on to do what you want to do at that time, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, like in other games where uh, it is like spur of the moment. If it is like World, right, where if you're in a home base for your faction or whatever, and it's getting overrun by enemies, like it's fun to just kind of have that spontaneously happen. But I wouldn't log on actively to seek that out. I feel like, and that's why I mean, for me, so I never got to answer, and I want to answer this, but what would make me want to play an MMO in the future? And I mean, for me, like I don't think there's going to be an MMO in year 10 years, but even maybe that's too far, but like 1 to 3 to 5 years, it's gonna break out. I'm still gonna play the MMO because I'm weak and I'm always hopeful, but I think
all are.
If you liked Dark Age of Camelot, Camelot Unchained is coming up pretty soon.
yeah, it's I mean, I'll probably try it, but for me, what I would like to see in an MMO is that shock and awe feeling that I had when I was playing my first couple MMOs. So that shock and awe of like, this is so foreign to me and it's so cool. That's why I think like, VR or AR MMOs is gonna probably be like, kind of that next shock and awe. Like, you mean I can immerse myself fully into a game like this? Like I can control actions. That has shock and awe value. When you can just jump into an MMO and it feels copy pasted and like, yeah, maybe the battle mechanics are different. Like, I'm gonna try it. The struggle is real. But yeah, that for me.
All right, so consent. I think everyone just wants something new for whatever's coming up. A couple years comes to an MMO. We want something to knock our socks off. We've been given the same song and dance for the last 10 years. Like, someone needs to compete with these big games and something new to deal with. Now, I think the best option would try and do like a FPS MMO, which still hasn't been done right for some reason. It's been like, how has that not been done? I know Overwatch was supposed to be that, which
Project
actually
Titan.
will segue into our next episode for next week, which is our Overwatch episode. We're gonna go over the grand finals and the Overwatch League and all that fun stuff. But I think this is gonna be done for us today, boys. Any final thoughts? Put it off.
Final thoughts for me is, Adam, I'm pretty sure your wife texted me saying that I look super excited to be here, and told me to keep up the good work. So when you jump off, tell your wife
That's nice of her.
Thanks for the text.
I'll let her know.
All right. Anything else, John?
I mean, I could get into some other topics, but I don't think that's be for another episode. So,
All right. We'll see you guys next week for the Overwatch episode.
This was number 2.
Reformed Gamers, episode 2. John and I still aren't reformed.
getting there.